"I love you," the rancher said. "Then why didn't you hold me?" the Apache girl whispered. The ranch lay wide and open under the burning sun of the American Southwest. Dry land stretched far into the distance, broken only by fences, cattle, and old windmills that creaked when the wind passed through. Life here was slow, demanding, and honest. Every day began before sunrise and ended after sunset. The land did not care about feelings. It only responded to work. The rancher grew up on this land. From a young age, he learned that words were less important than actions. His father rarely spoke about emotions. Instead, he showed love by fixing broken fences, feeding animals on time, and making sure the family never went hungry. When the rancher was still a boy, he learned how to ride a horse, how to mend tools, and how to stand tall even when life felt heavy. Crying was not something encouraged. Silence was strength. He became a quiet man, strong in his body and careful with his words. People in nearby towns respected him. They called him reliable, hardworking, and steady. But inside, he often felt unsure about how to express what he felt. He believed that being present and loyal was enough. To him, love did not need to be loud. Not far from the ranch lived an Apache community. Their land carried deep history, stories passed from elders to children through spoken words and shared moments. The Apache girl was raised in this world of tradition, meaning, and emotional awareness. Her grandmother taught her that feelings were not weakness. They were part of being human. She learned the value of listening, of silence that carried meaning, and of closeness that brought comfort. She grew up watching the sky, learning the names of plants and understanding the land not just as property, but as something alive. She was taught to respect herself and others, to speak gently, and to value emotional connection. Love to her was shown through care, presence, and shared pain. When someone hurt, you stayed close. You did not turn away. The rancher first met her during a small local gathering near the edge of town. It was one of those events where communities came together for food, conversation, and shared space. He noticed her standing with her family, calm and observant. She noticed him too, tall, quiet, and distant, yet grounded like the land itself. Their first conversation was simple. A few polite words, a shared smile, nothing more. But something about that moment stayed with both of them. Over time, they crossed paths again. Sometimes it was near the market. Sometimes it was at community events. Sometimes it was simply passing each other on the road. Slowly, familiarity grew. They began talking more. Their conversations were careful at first, respectful and reserved. He spoke about the ranch, the animals, the responsibility he carried. She spoke about her family, her culture, and the stories she grew up hearing. They listened to each other with interest, though often their silences said more than their words. The rancher admired her calm strength. She carried herself with quiet confidence, rooted in something deeper than the surface. The Apache girl noticed his reliability. He showed up when he said he would. He remembered small details. He treated people fairly. That mattered to her. As months passed, their bond grew. They spent time together walking along open fields, sitting near the land they both respected in different ways. Sometimes they spoke. Sometimes they didn't. The silence between them felt safe, but also unfinished. The rancher felt something unfamiliar growing inside him. He had never been good at naming emotions, but he knew he cared for her deeply. Still, he struggled with how close to let himself get. He worried about crossing boundaries, about doing something wrong, about showing too much. In his mind, distance was a form of respect. The Apache girl felt the connection too. She believed their growing closeness meant trust. She opened up slowly, sharing parts of herself, her fears, and her hopes. She expected that as feelings deepened, closeness would follow naturally. To her, love meant standing beside someone, especially when emotions were heavy. But she began to notice something missing. When moments became emotional, he pulled back. When conversations grew deeper, he changed the subject or stayed silent. He cared, but he showed it in ways she struggled to feel. He was always there, yet sometimes felt far away. Still, she stayed. She believed understanding took time. She respected his pace, hoping he would one day step closer. The land around them watched quietly as two people from different worlds tried to meet in the middle. The rancher believed love was proven through work and loyalty. The Apache girl believed love lived in comfort and closeness. Neither was wrong, but neither fully understood the other yet. As part one ends, their bond stands at the beginning of something meaningful but fragile. Two hearts are connected, yet shaped by very different lessons about love. The question is not whether they care, but whether they will learn how to show it before silence creates distance that words can no longer repair. If you want, I can now. Some days she would come near the ranch, watching from a distance as he worked with the cattle. Other days, he would visit her community, standing respectfully beside her family, listening more than speaking. The rancher showed care in the ways he knew best. He fixed things without being asked. He made sure she was safe when traveling. If she mentioned needing something, it appeared a few days later, placed quietly in her hands with no explanation. He believed these acts spoke louder than words. To him, showing love meant being dependable, steady, and present. When he looked at her, his chest felt tight in a way he could not explain. He admired her strength, her calm voice, the way she noticed details others ignored. He wanted to protect that peace. Yet every time he felt the urge to step closer, to offer comfort in a more personal way, fear stopped him. Fear of doing the wrong thing. Fear of crossing a line he did not understand. Fear of revealing emotions he had never learned how to manage. The Apache girl felt his care, but she also felt the distance. She saw the effort he made, the quiet kindness, the respect. She appreciated it deeply. But there were moments when appreciation was not enough. There were times when her heart felt heavy, and she needed more than thoughtful actions. She needed closeness. She needed reassurance that went beyond responsibility. She grew up believing that love was something you could feel, not just observe. When someone cared, they stayed close during difficult moments. They listened not just with ears but with presence. They shared the weight of feelings instead of leaving someone to carry them alone. As weeks passed, she began to notice a pattern. When conversations stayed light, he was comfortable. When she laughed, he smiled easily. But when she spoke about pain, about memories that hurt, or fears that kept her awake at night, he became quiet. Not angry, not cold, just distant. As if he believed stepping back was the kindest choice. One evening, as the sun sank low and painted the sky in soft colors, they sat together near the edge of the land they both respected. The air was calm. Birds moved quietly in the distance. She spoke about something personal, an old loss that still lived inside her. Her voice remained steady, but her hands trembled slightly. He listened, his face serious, his eyes focused on the ground. He wanted to help, but his body stayed still. He did not know how to reach out. He feared that touching her in such a moment might be wrong, that it might cause harm instead of comfort. So he stayed silent, offering space instead of closeness. She noticed. She finished speaking and waited. The silence stretched longer than she expected. He finally spoke, telling her that he cared, that he was sorry she had gone through so much. His words were sincere, but they felt incomplete. Something important was missing. That night she went home feeling confused. She knew he cared. She did not doubt that. But she wondered if care without closeness could truly be enough. She questioned whether he understood what she needed, or if he ever would. The rancher returned to his land carrying a different kind of weight. He replayed the evening in his mind. He wondered if he had failed her somehow. Yet another part of him believed he had done the right thing by respecting her space. He told himself that love did not need to look the same for everyone. Days turned into months, and their relationship continued in this quiet tension. They shared smiles, small moments, and long conversations, but there was an invisible wall between them. Neither knew how to name it. Neither knew how to break it. One afternoon, during a local event, he finally said the words out loud. They stood away from the crowd, the noise fading into the background. His voice was low, steady, and careful as he told her he loved her. It was not dramatic, it was not loud, but it was honest. Her heart skipped when she heard it. She had waited for those words longer than she realized. She looked at him, searching his face. She felt happiness, relief, and confusion all at once. She wanted to feel close to him in that moment, to let the words settle between them like warmth. But again, he stayed where he was. No movement, no gesture, just words hanging in the air. She smiled softly, accepting what he offered, but inside, something ached. She wondered how someone could say they loved her and still feel so far away. She did not question his truth, but she questioned his understanding of love. As part 2 comes to an end, both stand at a fragile point. He believes love has been clearly spoken. She believes love has not yet been fully shown. Neither is wrong, yet both are missing something vital. The distance between intention and action quietly grows, setting the stage for a moment that will change everything. Life has a way of testing people at the moment they feel most unsure. For the Apache girl, that moment arrived quietly, without warning, on an ordinary day that began like any other. She woke before sunrise, helped her family, and planned to meet the rancher later that evening. Nothing felt unusual. The sky looked the same. The land felt steady beneath her feet. Yet by nightfall, something inside her would change forever. During the day, an unexpected situation unfolded within her community. It was not dramatic or loud, but it carried emotional weight. Old memories were stirred, and unresolved pain returned to the surface. Words were spoken that reopened wounds she had tried to heal for years. She remained calm on the outside, but inside, she felt shaken and exposed. By the time the sun began to set, she felt exhausted, not in her body but in her heart. She needed comfort, not advice, not solutions, just the presence of someone who cared. Without thinking too much, she went to see the rancher. He noticed immediately that something was wrong. Her steps were slower. Her eyes carried a heaviness he had not seen before. She tried to smile, but it did not reach her eyes. They walked together in silence, the familiar land stretching around them. Normally, silence between them felt safe. That evening, it felt heavy. When they stopped near a quiet spot, she finally spoke. Her voice was steady, but the effort it took was clear. She shared what had happened, choosing her words carefully. She did not raise her voice or show anger. Instead, she spoke with honesty, allowing herself to be vulnerable in a way she rarely was. As she spoke, the rancher listened closely. His chest tightened. He felt her pain even if he did not fully understand it. He wanted to help. He wanted to make it better. But once again, he froze. He believed that moments like this required restraint. He thought the respectful thing was to give her space, to let her process her feelings without interference. He told himself that stepping back showed care. So he stayed where he was, hands at his sides, feet planted firmly on the ground. She finished speaking and waited. The silence that followed felt different from all the others they had shared before. It was not calm. It was sharp and lonely. She stood there hoping, without even realizing it, that he would step closer, that he would offer comfort in a way that went beyond words. But he did not move. He spoke softly, telling her he was sorry she was hurting, that he cared about her deeply. His words were honest. But they felt distant. They floated in the air without grounding her. Something inside her cracked. She had never needed much. She was strong. She carried herself with pride. She did not ask for attention or reassurance easily. But in that moment, she needed to feel held, not physically but emotionally. She needed to know she was not alone in carrying the weight of her pain. She looked at him then, really looked at him. She saw the concern in his eyes. She saw the fear too. And she understood that he cared, but also that he did not know how to show it when it mattered most. Her voice was quiet when she spoke again, almost a whisper, but the words carried more weight than anything said before. "You said you love me," she said. He nodded slowly. "Then why didn't you hold me?" she asked. The question hung between them, simple and devastating. The rancher felt as if the ground beneath him shifted. He had no answer ready. He had never thought of love in those terms. To him, love was protection, consistency, and respect. He did not realize that in trying so hard not to do the wrong thing, he had done something far worse. He had not shown up when she needed him most. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came. Everything he might say felt too small. She did not raise her voice. She did not accuse him. There was no anger in her tone, only sadness. That made it harder. If she had been angry, he might have known how to respond. But this quiet disappointment left him helpless. She stepped back slightly, creating space herself now. Not out of fear, but out of realization. She saw clearly in that moment that they were standing on different sides of the same feeling. They both cared, but they spoke different emotional languages. She told him she needed time, not to punish him, but to understand herself. She needed to know if she could continue loving someone who did not know how to be present in the way she needed. He wanted to stop her. He wanted to reach out. But again, he hesitated. That hesitation became his answer. She left that night without looking back. The rancher stayed where he was long after she was gone. The land felt colder, emptier. He replayed her words again and again in his mind. "Why didn't you hold me?" It echoed louder than any accusation ever could. For the first time, he questioned the lessons he had lived by his entire life. He wondered if silence had protected him, or if it had kept him from truly connecting. He realized that love spoken without action could feel hollow, no matter how sincere it was. Days passed and he did not see her. Her absence was louder than her presence had ever been. Everything reminded him of her, the quiet paths, the shared spaces, the unspoken moments they never finished. She, meanwhile, turned inward. She spent time with her family, with her traditions, with the land that had always grounded her. She did not regret loving him, but she mourned what could have been. She questioned whether she had expected too much, or whether she had simply expected the wrong thing from the wrong person. As part 3 ends, both are changed. A single question has exposed a truth neither can ignore. Love has been named, but understanding has not been reached. What comes next will depend not on feelings alone, but on whether either of them is willing to unlearn the past to build something new, or accept that love, sometimes, is not enough. Time moved forward, even though both of them felt stuck in the same moment. The days after that night passed slowly, as if the land itself was holding its breath. The rancher woke each morning before sunrise, just as he always had. The routine remained the same, but everything felt different. The quiet that once comforted him now felt heavy. The spaces where her voice used to exist felt too large. He worked harder than usual, keeping his hands busy to avoid his thoughts. He fixed fences that did not need fixing. He checked on the animals more often than required. At night, when the land finally grew still, the silence became unbearable. That was when her words returned to him, clear and sharp. Not angry words, honest ones. Words that showed him something about himself he had never been forced to see before. He began to understand that love was not only about respect and distance. It was also about presence. About stepping forward when fear told him to step back. This realization did not come all at once. It came slowly, painfully, through regret. He wondered how many times in his life he had mistaken restraint for kindness, silence for strength. Meanwhile, the Apache girl chose a different path. She did not run from her pain. She turned toward healing. She spent more time with her family, especially the elders who carried wisdom shaped by generations. She listened to their stories, stories about love, loss, and resilience. They did not tell her what to do. They reminded her who she was. She walked the land alone, letting the earth steady her thoughts. She reflected on the relationship, not with bitterness but with honesty. She knew the rancher cared for her. She never doubted that. But care alone could not fill the space she felt when she needed comfort. She asked herself hard questions. Could she continue loving someone who did not know how to meet her emotionally? Could she teach someone how to be present, or would that only lead to more pain? Days became weeks. Weeks became months. The rancher wanted to reach out to her many times. He wrote letters in his mind, imagined conversations where he explained everything he had failed to say. But he hesitated. He knew words alone would not be enough anymore. He feared doing more harm if he reached out without fully understanding what needed to change. Instead, he began changing quietly. He started paying attention to people around him in ways he never had before. When someone spoke about a hard day, he listened longer. When a neighbor struggled, he stayed instead of leaving early. These small changes did not erase his regret, but they taught him something important. Being present did not mean losing control. It meant sharing the moment. The Apache girl noticed changes in herself too. She grew stronger, more certain of her needs. She realized that asking for closeness was not weakness, it was honesty. She learned that love should not require constant translation. It should feel safe, not confusing. One afternoon, months later, their paths crossed unexpectedly. It happened in a public place surrounded by others. Their eyes met, and for a brief moment the world seemed to pause. Neither smiled, neither turned away. They acknowledged each other with quiet respect. Later that day, the rancher gathered the courage to speak to her. He did not rush. He did not try to explain everything at once. He simply asked if they could talk. They met in a familiar open space, the same land that had once brought them together. The air was calm. There was no tension, only honesty waiting to be spoken. He spoke first. He admitted he had been wrong, not in loving her but in how he had shown it. He told her he had confused distance with care. He told her he had been afraid of doing the wrong thing, and in that fear, he had failed to do the right one. She listened without interrupting. She appreciated his honesty, but she did not let it erase the pain she had felt. She told him how alone she had felt that night, how his silence had made her question her worth, even though she knew better. She told him that love without emotional presence felt incomplete to her. There were no promises made that day, no dramatic reunion, just understanding. They both realized something important. Sometimes people meet at the wrong time, even when feelings are real. Growth does not always happen together. Sometimes it happens apart. As they parted, there was sadness, but also peace. They had spoken the truth at last. As part 4 ends, both carry forward a deeper understanding of love and themselves. The rancher learns that courage sometimes means stepping closer, not back. The Apache girl learns that honoring her needs is an act of self-respect. Whether their paths will fully reunite remains uncertain, but they are no longer defined by misunderstanding, only by growth. Time continued to move forward, gentle but unstoppable. The land changed with the seasons, just as the people living on it did. For the rancher, life slowly found a new rhythm. The pain he once tried to ignore had softened into understanding. He still woke before sunrise, still worked the land with the same dedication, but something inside him was different now. He paid attention to feelings, his own and those of others. He no longer believed that silence was always strength. He often thought about the Apache girl, not with regret alone but with gratitude. Loving her had changed him in ways he never expected. Through her, he learned that love was not just about staying or providing. It was about being emotionally present. He practiced this lesson every day, with friends, with family, and with himself. The Apache girl also moved forward with purpose. She continued to grow into the woman she was meant to be, confident, grounded, and honest with herself. She carried her experience with the rancher as a lesson, not a wound. She understood now that love should feel safe, warm, and shared. She no longer questioned whether her needs were too much. She knew they were valid. Years passed. Their lives unfolded separately, yet quietly connected by memory. Occasionally, they heard about each other through mutual acquaintances. The rancher learned that she was doing well, respected in her community, and deeply connected to her roots. She heard that he had become more open, more engaged, and kinder in ways that went beyond responsibility. One afternoon, long after the pain had faded, they met again by chance. There was no shock, no rush of emotion, just recognition. They were no longer the same people who had once stood divided by misunderstanding. They sat and talked like two adults who had shared something meaningful and survived it. There was laughter this time, gentle and sincere. They spoke about life, about growth, about the paths they had taken. Not once did they blame each other. There was nothing left to prove. The rancher finally understood what she had needed back then, not just safety but closeness, not just loyalty but emotional presence. He told her so, not as an apology but as acknowledgement. She smiled, accepting the truth without reopening old wounds. She told him she never doubted his love. She only wished he had known how to show it when it mattered most. There was no reunion, no promise of a future together. They both knew their lives had moved in different directions, but there was peace in that realization. Sometimes love's purpose is not to last forever, but to teach. As they parted for the last time, there was no sadness, only respect. They carried forward a shared truth. Love must be felt, not just spoken. The land remained, steady and patient, holding their story without judgment. And though they walked separate paths, they did so wiser, stronger, and more whole than before.